So, continuing with my Demon Slayer obsession today, I'm going to explain something fairly simple but I've seen some confusion on, and that's the mark. More specifically, I'm going to be explaining how to get the mark, what it does, its drawbacks, and who obtained it within the story, and the circumstances surrounding how they got it. So let's not waste any more time and jump straight in. Starting with how someone actually obtains the mark, this is relatively simple. You either must be a descendant of Yoriichi, the first man to have the mark, or you can be within prolonged exposure to someone who has already manifested the mark. For instance, Moichiro acquired the mark after coming across Tanjiro and then later unleashing his anger to raise his temperature above 39 degrees and increased his heart rate to be above 200 beats per minute. After he had done this, he was able to manifest his mark and escape Gyoko's water prison. Another example would be Gyu. Gyu acquired the mark during his fight with Akaza, and in this fight, Gyu was forced to stop suppressing himself, and he states his senses were slapped awake. And he describes the situation as where the strong face off in a life or death situation, and this is what allowed him to enter his marked state. We can assume here that the fight pushed Gyu to his limits, and his heart rate reached over 200, and his body temperature rose to be above 39 degrees, much like Moichiro. Now, the mark is a state of being much like a power-up, like a Super Saiyan or a Bankai in Bleach, for instance. And each mark varies in appearance based on the person and what breathing style they practice. It is a drastic increase in power, however you can be knocked out of it, and your mark state can be turned off by yourself. We see Gyu get knocked out of his mark state by Akaza when he uses end style Chaotic Blue Metal Afterglow. After this attack, we see Gyu go from being in his mark state to being out of it, and we can conclude it is due to this attack. However, one can learn to master the mark like Tanjiro or Kokoshiba. We will stick to Tanjiro for this explanation. Tanjiro's mark before the Hashira training behaved much like Gyu's does. He had to enter the mark and he could be knocked out of it if he took enough damage. He also struggled to enter it a lot of the time. However, during Gyome's strength training, Genyo explained to Tanjiro the repetitive actions. This was a way for someone to focus in and achieve what they needed to. Genyo, for example, could not use breaths and he couldn't use breathing techniques, but he used the repetitive actions to achieve what breath users could. With this knowledge in mind, Tanjiro then used these actions to easily enter his mark state and push the boulder forward. Interestingly enough, after Tanjiro enters this mark state, his mark grows larger, but most importantly, from here on, Tanjiro remains permanently within his mark and achieved what he wished for moments ago, that being to permanently be in his mark state. And Gyu elaborates as this was the point of the Hashira training, to unlock the mark for those who do not have it, and enable those that do to be able to permanently stay within the mark. It seems, however, that only Tanjiro was able to do this. However, the majority of the Hashira seem to have expert control over the mark, and are able to rest within it for massive amounts of time, and enter it when they please. Gyome, for example, could enter it and maintain it for the entire Koko fight and Muzan fight, and Saname, who acquired the mark during the Koko fight, could enter and leave it freely after his first time using it. For Gyome's case, this could be due to his ability to use the repetitive actions and achieve the breath amp on top of his normal breaths, but that's just my speculation on this. Saname, Iguro and Gyu's skill with the mark after only just acquiring it is strange to me, but this could just be a testament to their raw skill as the Hashira. Now we can move on to what the mark actually does, and this is a bit vague and contentious, but my interpretation of the mark is that it's a 100 times amp to your base power in this context meaning speed and strength. And I say this because of a few factors. The first factor is that Tanjiro states that he cannot cut off Gyutaro's head and needs to summon 100 times that strength. His mark manifests, he kills Gyutaro. This by itself would be iffy, so let's take a look at some supporting evidence from later in the series to back up this interpretation. During the Akaza fight with Gyu, we see that once Gyu manifests the mark, he's immediately able to start getting close to Akaza and almost kills him there and then. And Tanjiro even confirms Gyu got faster, as well as Akaza also supporting this. Unfortunately for Gyu, Akaza's compass essentially makes any fight he's in an equal stats fight, as the compass seems to match his opponent's speed when he's fighting them. You should recall, while Akaza was focused on Tanjiro, Gyu was able to cut off his arms, he was able to get all these attacks in on Akaza, despite the compass being able to detect attacks coming from behind him. This is due to the compass essentially being adjusted to Tanjiro at the time, and once it adjusts to Gyu, he can no longer perform that same level of feat. And this adjustment period is immediate, as described by Tanjiro, which explains why Gyu did not instantly blitz Akaza, and instead only landed a few attacks, which does not contradict my equal stats interpretation. Now, that may have sounded like a non sequitur, but trust when I say that I had to get that out of the way, as to remove as many refutations to the 100 times amp as I can. The next piece is from the Kokoshibo fight, where Koko explicitly states the mark increases one's power, and after Sanome joins, he notes to himself how fast they are fighting. This would obviously imply that their speed is now noteworthy, which is right after Sanome gets his mark, which other evidence supports increased his speed. Another instance is Tanjiro failing to dodge the Primal Emotions staff despite reacting to it and knowing he was there, and then when he enters his mark, he completely blitzes and cuts off the head of all 3 Primal Emotions. One was right in front of him and the other 2 were a fair distance in front of him, and all 3 failed to even attempt to block or dodge. They got completely blitzed. The final example is when Iguro obtains his mark, he immediately perception blitzes Gyu. A perception blitz is when you blitz someone so fast that they do not even see you move, completely beyond your perception and speed. And Gyu fails to notice him jump directly up, despite him looking right at him. And then Iguro proceeds to cut off both of Muzan's arms and evade any kind of counterattack. And after that, he uses the tightening coil on Muzan, moving from in front of him to behind him seemingly instantly. There is of course the kind of anti-fear of Muzan blitzing the Hashira, pseudo anti-fear I should say, but this is due to the whips on Muzan's thighs, which Tanjiro confirms are faster than any of his other attacks, and this is why they all got blitzed. But even the word blitz is kind of contentious, as Iguro only had slashes across its face from an attack which was in all likelihood intended to kill him. So we could easily just say that those whips are comparable to marked Gyu in speed, and this would not be an anti-feat for the marked scaling. All of this should serve to really hammer down just how powerful the mark is and why it's such an incredible tool, one that the Demon Slayer Corps thought it would be worth weeks of training to obtain and or master. So the drawbacks of the mark are either incredible and makes the mark not worth it at all, or invaluable and a must have, a 10 out of 10, and this depends on who you are. If you or I obtained the mark in like modern day, it would be terrible. It'd be like contracting a disease, a deadly disease, and this is due to Kokoshibo's first-hand experience of the mark, and that is it kills anyone who reaches the age of 25. Now for the Hashira, or a regular Demon Slayer, this mark is incredibly valuable, and Gyome puts it best. The Hashira already know the drawbacks of the mark, but for a Demon Slayer, there is no guarantee they will survive to see tomorrow, let alone 25. So why would they concern themselves with it? The Demon Slayers are risking everything they have to stop Muzan from killing their families and the families of others, and they will stop at nothing to kill Muzan. What weak resolve they must have if they were to give up because the mark will kill them. What weak resolve they must have to refuse the opportunity to save so many lives just to preserve their own, and what weak resolve they must have to not take the chance to end one of the biggest threats in history because of their own fear of death. Gyome is genuinely insulted by Kokoshibo's words and proceeds to mock him, as Gyome is 27 and he has the mark. However, as Kokoshibo foretold, Gyome did die fulfilling those with the mark do not live beyond 25. In this sense, it would be more do not live for long past 25. The only exception to this rule is Yoriichi himself, the first bearer of the mark. He lived until he was over 80 years of age. It's unknown why. It could be due to him being born with the mark, and thus it works differently, or due to his mastery of sun breathing, but overall it's unknown. It's interesting to note that demon biology allows you to survive the mark's drawbacks, so there is no real reason for a demon not to acquire the mark, if possible, as Koko had his mark before becoming a demon, so we don't really know if demons can get it after being a demon, or if they have to have it before. And to wrap up, we can talk a little about who has the mark and how they got it. So starting with Tanjiro, he first used his mark against Gyutaro when he sliced off his head, and he brought this about due to his strong desire to kill Gyutaro and his desperate need for overwhelming power in that moment. The next to acquire the mark was Muichiro, who was consumed by anger and let his emotions go crazy, resulting in him awakening the mark. After that, the next to awaken the mark was Konroji, and she awakened this out of the need to protect Tanjiro and his friends, and to defeat Zohakuten. The fourth person to awaken the mark was Gyu, when he faced Akaza, and this was due to Akaza's raw power and Gyu being forced to stop holding back. His senses were dragged forward and his mark awakened. Then Gyome used his mark against Koko, who acquired his mark hundreds of years ago. It's unclear exactly when Gyome got his mark, but within the series, he uses it after Gyu and uses it in response to Kokoshibo's unbeatable strength. So that's when I'm putting him in terms of order. Then Soname awakens his mark for similar reasons to Gyome. And finally, Iguro awakens his mark in order to protect Konroji and defeat Muzan. He also turns his blade red in the same scene. So now some contention arises from when Iguro actually started using the mark and if he had it from the start or just awakened it mid-Muzan fight. I am of the belief that he had it midway through the Muzan fight when we are shown his chest. We have no evidence to say he got it any earlier, so I'm not going to assume he did. I'm just going to take the most reasonable approach and state he got it when we are shown he is using it. Now, note, I'm not denying he could have had it beforehand. I'm just saying I don't think there's enough evidence to say he did. Now, something really strange is Kokoshibo had two marks. He had one on the top right of his head and one coming from the bottom left. This is similar to Demon Tanjiro. He had three marks. He had one from the top right, one from the top left, and one from the bottom left of his face. I have no idea why this is happening. It could be related to just the demon blood and how strong someone is. It could be for a variety of reasons. I'm unsure why exactly they grew extra marks, but I can only say it's due to just either mastery of sun breathing or just raw power. And I'm likely to start believing it's just raw power. But it's really up to speculation as to why he gets these extra marks and if they actually amp him even further or not. I don't think they do actually amp him any further. I just think they're kind of like a cosmetic thing. And that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for the next upload, which will likely be a similar video to this one, covering the see-through world, as I know some confusion revolves around that. If you have any problems with the video, please leave a comment or join my Discord server below. I really like getting feedback from everyone. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Later, guys.